Just to do a quick introduction to those that are joining us, Dr. Maya Bundt is the head of cyber and digital solutions at Swiss Re. She is also an independent board director, contributor to the World Economic Forum's Global Futures Council on cybersecurity, and a partner for digital risk at the International Center for Corporate Governance. Beyond this, she does a lot of research and white papers, a constant contributor to this body of knowledge. And so great to have you, Maya. And today, the topic is about cyber insurance. I believe that's a very critical topic in terms of the overall risk management and mitigation, some of the proxy measures that boards can take, and upcoming pretty new in the overall cyber ecosystem, a new tool, an instrument that is still forming. So great to hear your thoughts around it. And some of our attendees may have probably realized that we have been on this topic for quite some time now in terms of the growth and tracking the growth as well as the maturity of this particular topic. So I would love to hear from you, your thoughts, and holistically, where does this fit with respect to the cyber risk and resilience? And especially you mentioned about what does COVID-19 and the whole pandemic mean to cyber insurance? This is another very challenging times, but what lessons can we learn and take forward? I believe we also kind of looking at what we will take away from this, from the current, like what are the digital transformation elements that are going to be probably staying with us as a norm going forward. So great to have you, and over to you, Maya, for your thoughts.
Awesome. Great. Thank you so much, Val, for inviting me to this series here. And I'm very glad that I can, be here and talk to you. So I have prepared a little bit about cyber insurance. If there are questions then at the end to that topic, that's fine. Otherwise, we can talk also about the white paper that you also mentioned, Val. So maybe just a little bit more about myself, and because I think that is important to understand where I'm coming from. I'm a natural scientist by training. I've done a PhD in soil science, weird topic as well. And I moved then into insurance. I've been in insurance for about 20 years now. When I was still in academia, I could never imagine going into insurance. It was a field that didn't appeal to me at that time. But I have never spent a single day, I think, in the last 20 years where I was bored, where I didn't, learn anything new during the day. So it's a really, really interesting area. The last 6 to 7 years I have spent within insurance, in cyber insurance, and that has even kind of blown up my interest as well as my workload, actually. There's so much going on in that field. Super interesting area. Now, cyber insurance is for people who come from the information security side, technology professionals, security professionals, is often a bit of an off topic or a strange topic. So please let me explain a little bit about cyber insurance and what that is and why it is important as well. So I always say cyber is the dark side of digitalization. And please keep in mind, when I talk about cyber, I'm not only talking about the malicious attacks, some attackers coming from the outside, hackers, things like that. I'm talking about all kinds of digital risks. So from an insurance perspective, where you always look at the risks to an entity, a company, a person, you look at it usually quite holistically. So cyber, for me, if I'm talking about cyber risk, if I'm talking about cyber insurance, it's always several risks. For example, we always had discussions in the beginning when talking, the insurance people and the cyber security people talking to each other is actually a risk that an event, something that happens because of a human error, is that actually a cyber event? In my world, it is clearly. So please, for the next 20 minutes or so, just lump into your minds when I'm talking about cyber, please think digital risk insurance, really. If you're looking at, what is it, I think it's also important to understand, just very, very high level, what is today cyber insurance actually covering. And if we're looking, leave away for right now the area of private people, so the individuals, and looking at companies, you have basically under cyber insurance things that are insured that have to do with data, of course, and the non-availability of data, or the confidentiality of data. And so in that sense, what you see is coverages that will cover, for example, if a business cannot operate because they cannot access their data. Typical in the last few years, I think last 3 years, with mounting caseload, is cyber extortion, where data is being held hostage, and the company then needs to pay in order to get the key, unlock the data. In those instances, very often the businesses that are affected cannot work, or can only partially work, which means they have a business interruption. They cannot sell their goods or services at that time, and thus they have an interruption of their operations. You have that as a typical insurance coverage in property insurance, but for that you usually need a physical damage that allows you to then claim that loss, since your data is only encrypted, for example, and cannot be accessed. That doesn't count. So you actually need a cyber insurance to be able to cover those type of incidents, right? And the other big area really is the area of data privacy, where any data privacy violation might lead to liabilities of a company. And then there comes a whole lot of other losses or loss types in connection with that. Imagine you have a data breach, where personal data of your customers, for example, has been breached and has been stolen. Then depending on the jurisdiction, really, those companies, they first need to find out where the leak has been, where the breach has been, need to find out where how much data was actually stolen. That alone is a huge cost item to go through the whole analysis, go through the forensics. Specialist companies are usually taken in to help with that. Then very often, depending where you are, the data subjects need to be notified. So there is costs occurring for the company due to that. That also means you have to potentially set up a call center and in several different languages, etc. So there's a lot of cost coming on top of it, and then on top comes the liability. If people, these companies get sued by those data subjects whose data has been stolen. So there's a lot of cost, a lot of liabilities that add on, and that is actually really what cyber insurance is for. You have these kind of first-party losses. That is when something happens to the company itself, and then you have the third-party losses, where you insure against anything that is happening to third parties, where the company is basically harming a third party, which is in case of the data privacy violation. And then one of the important things, and I think this is really, really important to understand, is of modern cyber insurance, is that the insurance products very often, almost always, come with not only the costs that or the remuneration of the cost that potentially for this company or that IT security company that does then the forensics. Very often the insurance companies also have their own service providers and then help with direct help their insured, their policyholders when something happens. This is especially important for companies that do not have their own IT security team. Sometimes companies are so small that they don't even have their own IT teams, right? And so this kind of very direct, very concrete help is often a huge help to the policyholders, so they can actually, once something has happened, they can actually react, and that reaction also then has an impact on how costly actually that incident will be. So that's in a nutshell what cyber insurance is. Obviously, that came about on the back end of the digitalization. In the olden times, it wasn't really necessary. Then it came and it kind of moved itself into the space in the same manner as the digitalization kind of advanced. More and more processes of companies were made digital, and on the back end you always had these cyber risks, and one of the problems here is that a lot of the business owners, a lot of companies, they actually haven't just sat down and taken a deep look at their own processes to see how vulnerable they are and how dependent they actually are nowadays on these processes. I always like to give the example of a hotel I wanted to stay at last year, where I arrived and I wanted to check in. And they couldn't check me in because their computer systems were down. Now they had all the registrations for the rooms they had in their computer systems, and also the keys. They couldn't basically organize the key for me. So I had to basically leave and come back a few hours later. I did that, and thankfully the systems were up and running again when I returned. But you can very well imagine that I could have walked next door into another hotel and they would have lost at least my business, right? So even companies, businesses that are still very non-digital, they are actually in a lot of ways digital, because in a hotel, what do they sell? Rooms and a bed and a place to stay for a night, maybe food, but even that, the access to these services is currently, or nowadays, is very highly digitalized. There has been a lot of discussion on cyber insurance and a lot of talking about cyber insurance. And in the last years, you could read about it in the press. There were also some negative press coverages about that. And it sounded like cyber insurance is really a big thing. And that's just one of the things that I would like to leave you with today is cyber insurance is a growing field in insurance, but cyber insurance is actually not a big insurance line of business yet. Just to compare that, we have currently about maybe 5.5 billion of premium worldwide, cyber premium in the insurance market. And if you compare that with the overall insurance market, that is about 5,200 billion, right? That includes life and health and all the non-life business lines, but that's about it. So it's about a per mil. And if you're compare it with something like motor insurance, that alone has 775 billion roughly of worldwide premium. For cyber, in comparison, only 5.5. So it is a small but growing field, and I think it is an important area, because it really can support the economy and also the society to become more cyber resilient. Now, when Val asked me to do this webinar here, we talked about, you know, what's the impact of the coronavirus crisis on cyber insurance. I mean, one impact obviously is, and you see that here in my background as well, a lot of us are working from home. That is one of the immediate impacts. The people who can and still can work. A lot of us are working from home, which obviously changes the cybersecurity equation of many companies. Change that from one day to the other, especially those companies who weren't really prepared for that. That were, there are companies that had this kind of working from home style and more flexible working arrangements for a long time. And I think they were probably a lot better prepared. Others had to go out and, also purchase laptops for their employees, had to set up all the secure ways of communication, which obviously, especially in the beginning, was a big impact on the overall security of any company in that situation. At the same time, since many businesses couldn't operate in the way they were used to anymore, the business models for some of them moved over to more digitalized business models. Simple example is all of a sudden restaurants or retail food stores selling online and then delivering their products to the doorstep. These things have happened widely, and we see in almost all of the different industries, we see a huge kind of jump in their digitalization maturity, or where they are going. The digital transformation really got a total booster from COVID, right? And I think this is also the reason why so many criminals then try to cash in on that and really up their game in terms of trying to trick people to fall for scams, trying to trick people to click on links, to click on attachment with malware, and then either extort people or otherwise harm those, all of us basically. And I think this is something, if you're looking at what does it mean now for cyber insurance, I think here it's really important to understand there is an immediate effect. So you can expect potentially more claims, a higher frequency of claims, more people working from home, less secure, more attacks, more people trying to trick people, that will most probably amount to a higher caseload for these type of losses, and might be lead to higher frequency of claims. But I think there is one area one aspect to it that we should not underestimate, and that is that so many people now, private people but also business, they all of a sudden notice how dependent they are on the digital means, because there is only that for communication, for doing business, for staying in the business. And that actually ups the importance of their digital security, and also of their, if you're looking from an insurance and risk management perspective, to manage those risks, it becomes all of a sudden much more important, because that is what keeps them up and running, that what keeps them alive, or many of them at least, at this point in time, right? So whenever you cannot rely on the physical world, you rely on the digital world. Now, the digital world has played a little bit of the back role, a supporting role in the past. Now with COVID, it's become the star, right? And as it becomes the star, it becomes more visible, and so I do believe firmly that in the long run we will see much more interest in cyber insurance, much more interest in also the management, the risk management of these digital risks. And actually, I do expect a boost for the cyber insurance market from this. We'll see how that is going to play out. But what I think is what I see, and I feel that already in the discussion with our clients, I feel that the insurance market is ready to respond to that. But that also means we have to have the right products and services to support the industry, to support the policyholders, to support individuals, to support small and medium-sized businesses, to support large businesses, to support cities and municipalities who are, often really, really vulnerable. It also means we have to have the right people, and that's quite a tricky thing to get the right people, because what we need is actually a mixture of everything, right? Ideally, we have people that understand insurance and can, understand how the insurance world works, can price risks, can assess risks, etc. But you also need the cybersecurity experience and the technical knowledge to be able to really assess the risk, and also look at the risks, kind of with a forward-looking viewpoint, right? Because you can't be overrun with something. I mean, of course you can, but it would be ideal if you were more forward-looking and could estimate the impact of, for example, any technical novelty into the market with widespread usage. If one could actually estimate that, what does that mean now for the riskiness of certain businesses? What does it mean then also in terms of loss frequency, loss severity, etc. And then next to insurance knowledge and cybersecurity knowledge, a lot of other knowledge is needed. Legal knowledge, right? Because you need to really make sure that you write those contracts, the insurance contracts, like the policies, that they are written in a way that makes sense, that it's unmistakable, that it's easy to understand. Is one of my if people who know me, it's a little bit of a hobby horse of mine. I think the insurance contracts are actually too cumbersome to read very often. So legal expertise, people that have a flair for policy and governance, people with risk management knowledge. If we need all these kind of different disciplines to come together to really build the right products, the right services for a working insurance market that then also helps the industry and the economy, but also the overall society to become more cyber resilient. And so it's quite of an exciting overlap of different disciplines. You need a lot of free thinking, a lot of innovation is happening in that space. So it's actually a great place to be. And that is actually the thing that I would like to close on is here kind of a shout out for insurance in terms of bring these disciplines together, and the necessity of people with different backgrounds to work together to solve this problem. And I think we can solve it together, but for that we need the right people with the right mindset and the openness and the will to succeed. And if you have that, and I think insurance is actually a pretty cool place to be. And with that, I think I stop here and see whether there are any questions.
That's great. In terms of the segue to some of the questions that I've been getting on text, WhatsApp, and on all other channels, and previously for those who couldn't attend, you brought out a really interesting point in terms of where this particular domain or function of cybersecurity is in the industry, and what kind of people do we need to make it happen. So can you expand a little bit on on that gap specifically, right? Because you're building a product, and that product is kind of evolving as an industry in itself. And what would the existing leaders, what can they reshape, retool to actually get engaged in helping build that industry, which is in a very nascent form already?
Mm-hmm. So what we see is, fortunately, I think a lot of people in the tech industry have understood that insurance actually is something that is important, that can actually help move things along, and that is an important part of our current, our today's economy, right? Without insurance, you hardly have a business, right? You cannot build big things. You actually it's questionable whether you can actually invest into large things without insurance, right? So I think that is actually one thing that understood. The other thing is that a lot of people see insurance as an area which can support actually good behavior, good security behavior. And I sometimes get angry about that, because yes, that can be, but the equation is a little bit more complex than just, okay, you give people a discount on their insurance policy for good behavior, right? Cyber secure behavior. That is certainly one area that is possible. But what I wanted to point out is a lot of people in the tech world, they have actually understood already that insurance might play an important role in, making the world more cyber resilient. The reason for that is the insurance people, they always have this whole risk view, whereas in my experience, the cybersecurity people more have this cybersecurity view, right? And you need to marry those two views, and actually that is the beauty of it. And so I think if you are working in the tech environment, become active, reach out, look out for insurers, for insurance to work together with. A lot of insurers are working together with technology companies. Also, if there's always insurance companies building up their teams, obviously for their own defense, but also I think in the cyber insurance area, we need these people. And if you're, for example, taking my team is a huge mixture from people from typical insurance, business, law, consulting, cybersecurity, me as a kind of weird person, soil science. I have no idea how I fit in there, but you see how it works. Probably what I bring is a system thinking, right? So in thinking in systems. So I think this is where we need kind of the combined force of diversity, and that makes it, for me, one of the best places to be, really.
Excellent. Yeah. I mean, how fascinating this new job could be, right? So we have a question here from one of the audiences. Is how effective do you believe are the cyber insurance distribution channels and the broker selling cyber insurance? What additional tools would you think they need to do a better job for the carrier and the insured? What do you see reshaping of the distribution channel, or the existing distribution channel being brought up to speed with the cyber aspect?
Yeah. So I think that is something that is in flux. Obviously, insurance has their typical and general distribution channels, their own agent network or the brokers, and they are actually doing a good job in trying to get that insurance out. You have to see, however, that it's also a little bit of a skill question sometimes, because you have to, if you want to sell something, you need to be really comfortable with this. And there are specialist brokers that are super comfortable with cyber insurance, and others are less, right? And very often for the big brokers, you have specialized teams then, and that's also working. But I think it's difficult to expect from a person, whether that's a broker or an agent or whatever salesperson, to, you know, be comfortable with, you know, one area of insurance, say life and health, or maybe just a property insurance, or, you know, even liability insurance. And then comes a new and kind of weird insurance line along. And the problem here is it's also for the business owners, it's not always, you know, so transparent what they need, because as I said earlier, many of them haven't gone through that, you know, risk, at least for the smaller ones or the big ones. We're not talking about them, right? They have their professional risk management functions, and they know very well also all financial services. And but you know, the typical small business owner is difficult to understand, because it's such an intangible risk, right? And for that you need a lot of time to. So I think in cyber insurance, what we see is more online sales, more tools that help the business owners, or the, you know, entrepreneurs, or the you know, people who take the decisions, to understand actually, you know, what's their risk landscape, what's their risk view, and then find the right insurance at the same time. You have fintechs that kind of try to get into that space. Some of them are quite successful in that. So I think there is a lot of that is moving. In the personal line space, you almost always, or very, very often, you have alternative distribution channels as well, right? Your household company selling also insurance, telecom provider adding cyber insurance, a retailer which sells electronics also selling cyber insurance. These kind of things are, I think, becoming more and more the norm. So I think this is really an area in flux, and I'm curious where it brings us.
Yeah. No, that's absolutely what we are seeing from the, you know, from the field and the ground up. It's definitely an industry and a function, whether it's small and medium businesses or in a bigger organization, as evolving as it is now. So with the few minutes we got left, Maya, I just wanted to put a plug for the white paper that you and our other great friend Andrea wrote together. I hope, you know, soon we can get you both and maybe others too on a panel to talk about it. Any specific observation from that research into this specific topic?
Great. Yeah, thanks Val for that. Yeah, I'm very proud actually that we got this paper. It took us quite a few months to write it. Andrea, I think, is on the call today, so big shout out to Andrea as well. What we looked at really in this white paper was, you know, how can the overall cyber resilience be improved, right? And here we are talking kind of the kind of macro level. And one of the things that we have learned, and Andrea is a expert in that, in the ESG, so environmental social governance risk area, is that actually there is a lot of power in transparency, right? For a few years now, 20 years almost, there was a steady rise in the understanding that ESG risk, environmental social governance risk, are important. Also, it became then the norm that companies that were a little bit more proactive, they were already reporting on this early on. So their stakeholders, that could be, you know, either investors, but it could also be, you know, clients, customers, or partners. They could actually, you know, take a decision based on that transparency, whether they wanted to, you know, invest into that company or do business with that company. We actually believe that cyber is the next kind of frontier here, that there is currently no or almost no visibility or transparency for stakeholders to really take decisions on any company. And what we found out is, you know, the opinions on that is actually pretty unanimous, right? Everybody thinks cyber is super important. And again, please bear with me. So digital risk, management of digital risk, cyber resilience as the flip side of that is a super important factor in any company, or for any company to be able to deliver sustainable earnings, right? So if you're looking at it from that point of view, it is strange that there is, you know, no visibility to that. So this is why we wrote the paper, why we did some research and put it out like that. And our conclusion really is there is a gap currently, and we believe there will be, you know, a push towards more transparency, and the industry should, you know, would do good in, you know, being proactive about that, to think about what can actually be, you know, disclosed, what can be reported that makes sense but does not endanger the company itself.
All right, understood. And what a great topic that, you know, done on normal times is kind of applicable now as we go forward taking the norms. So thank you, Maya. It was great to have you. We'll have a lot of takeaways from this. Also, an understanding of the offering that's evolving in terms of cyber insurance. I just wanted to conclude today's webinar with an announcement for the next one. As you probably, many of you have already actually started joining us in a regular basis, though I understand this is kind of very odd time for quite a few of you who have joined. So we're recording this and we'll post it out. A lot of this learning is also available interactively when you work with us on our LinkedIn platform. But this will be available on YouTube, on the CFF YouTube channel. Please don't forget to subscribe to that. Our next speaker will be one of our common friends. It's going to be Troels Oerting, who has been the chairman of the Center for Cybersecurity at World Economic Forum. Again, we've done a lot of significant work with, or we're working with him now, and we look forward to that topic as well. I think a good continuation of this great topic. So thank you again, Maya. Thank you all for joining us. All stay safe, be well, and be healthy, and take care. Have a good day. Thanks. Bye bye.
Thanks a lot, Belle. Happy evening. Good day. Bye bye.